Hi, welcome to Easy CyberSec. In this video, let us understand what is red teaming in cybersecurity. Now, going forward, understanding red teaming. Alright, so a lot of organizations and nowadays a lot of governments have made it compulsory for a company, especially a financial company, to undergo red teaming at least once a year. Now, why is there so much emphasis that from the government itself they want companies to undergo red teaming? The reason being, red teaming is the most sophisticated, enhanced method of identifying vulnerabilities in any infrastructure. Now, how is that? The reason being, while doing red teaming, we do not focus just on one particular asset or one particular technology. As an example, if a company is having 10 websites, usually a penetration test would cover those 10 websites only. But in a red teaming engagement, we don't cover just the 10 websites. We do test the 10 websites. We also test the developers who are behind the 10 websites, the senior management in the company, the other employees in the company, the processes also that are there in the company. For example, what is the process for a vendor onboarding? Is there a way I can hijack this process and go into the company as a vendor? What is the process for a visitor to come into the company? Can I hijack this process and go inside as a visitor and try to enter the data center from there? All such sort of activities would happen only in a red teaming engagement. Now, it is not that you can just go ahead and blindly perform tests in a red teaming engagement. There are certain structures that you have to adhere to. Mainly, one thing is that you have to try to emulate APTs as much as possible. APTs are nothing but advanced persistent threats. They are the most sophisticated hackers who are mostly nation backed and they have access to a vast amount of resources which you and I do not have access to. Let me tell you a small story of how they become very sophisticated. Certain countries, like we all know that Microsoft Windows is not open source. We cannot get the source code of Windows unless it is hacked and leaked like how XP was leaked. But in a regular case, we will not be able to get access to the source code. But to governments, when certain governments want to deploy thousands of Microsoft Windows operating system across their infrastructure, they demand Microsoft to show them their source code. In this case, Microsoft has to oblige because they get a huge amount of returns and profit. Microsoft is just one such example. There are so many other different vendors who do that. So what happens over here is that now the nation state has access to source code which you and I do not have access to. And as you may have known, if you look at the source code, it is the most easiest way to identify vulnerabilities. Now, this is just one such example of how nation states attack and how they are so sophisticated. Now, coming back to our red teaming, we have to try to emulate these nation states as much as possible. In certain cases, we may not have the 0 days which they have, but in that case, we just have to try to obtain their 0 days and exploit some sort of dark web or dark market if possible, or try to create the 0 day by yourself. So all such sophisticated attacks you have to emulate. Now, in a red teaming engagement, we have three main objectives always. One is to obtain the highest persistent privileged access. Meaning to say, if you are in a Windows related infrastructure, you have to become the enterprise administrator or at least the domain administrator. If you are in a cloud and in an Azure cloud and environment, you have to become the global administrator. And from there, you can try to come into the on-premise or from premise, you can try and move to the Azure environment and become a global administrator there. Now, this is one particular objective. The second particular objective is to exfiltrate sensitive information from the company. All companies have sensitive information. One of our clients told us that they do not have sensitive information, so they're not very much worried about it. But what we did was we were able to exfiltrate their employee details itself, a lot of private details about their employees itself in this case. So after that, they realized, yes, the data that they have is also valuable. Third one is we have to identify the incident response capabilities of the blue team. That is, every company that engages a red team can have an internal blue team. The blue team actively identifies and protects the company against attackers. We always recommend that there be a blue team in every company. before we perform a red teaming engagement. Reason being, only then we can correctly assess their resilience capability. Resilience meaning how much they can withstand an attack and how soon they can recover. In this case, what we will try to identify is the MTTD and MTTR, which is nothing but the mean time to detect and the mean time to respond. Meaning to say, how long does the blue team take to identify an adversary in their network, and how long it takes for the blue team to respond to the adversary. That is, completely remove the adversary from their network or infrastructure and perform the required recovery and remediation process. Now, these are the three main goals of any red teaming engagement. Essential skill set. Now, red teaming definitely requires good amount of technical skill set. We will come to it in the second slide. But over here, the other essential skill sets is that you need to have creative thinking. A good amount of creative thinking is required because for social engineering and other scenarios. Reason being, nowadays people are pretty much aware. All companies have annual cybersecurity training procedures. So every year their employees go through a mandatory training where they have to perform an assessment and clear the assessment. And also companies regularly conduct phishing exercises for their employees, and whoever's clicked, they are penalized. They either have to pay a fine or they are warned. So all this makes the employee a little bit serious. So in this case, when you try to send them a fake invoice or a fake resume, most likely they're going to detect you. So what you have to do is that you have to become smarter than that and create more sophisticated scenarios. For that, you need a very good amount of creative thinking. We will tell you some of the scenarios that we had created during our teaming engagements in the coming slides. Second one is that you need a good amount of decision making skills, especially if you're a red team lead. You need to be able to make decisions within split seconds. As an example, I will tell you, we were about to clone the access card of a CEO, but if we clone the access, if the CEO finds us out, it was not a planned event at all. The CEO suddenly came out of the building, and we were just the team was just thinking whether we should go ahead and clone his card or not, access card or not. But what happens is that if the CEO understands that he thinks he's being cloned, then from then on the engagement is totally compromised and we have been detected. So in this case, we had to make a decision whether to clone him or not within a span of 5 seconds. Because if you miss that 5 seconds window, he is going to get into his car and we are going to miss him. So in this case, what we did was within that 5 seconds, we made a decision. Okay, let's go ahead and clone his card. And fortunately, we escaped without getting caught. So such decisions come to you all the time, and you have to be a good decision maker. Third skill is that you need to be good at forecasting. That is always trying to see 2 to 3 steps ahead of your actions, whether your action will trigger the blue team or will it not. Every action you need to think 2 to 3 steps ahead of the consequences. And the fourth one is good communication skills. You need to be able to communicate your vulnerabilities clearly to the client. You need to be able to communicate within yourself, with your team mainly very clearly. And you need to communicate with your senior management clearly in order to make them understand what is the scenario, what are the resources that you require. So good communication skill is pretty important. Fourth one is being a team player. Red teaming, I repeat, is never an activity that is performed by a single personnel. You always need a team with you. You can perform red teaming as an individual, but in that case, you will never be effective as performing red teaming with a team. Yeah, I will tell you a very good example. What happened was in our red teaming exercise, we had a fresher. It was for a client, but in our red team, we added a fresher who did not have prior red teaming experience. So what happened was in one of the crucial situations, he was the person who gave us the best idea to get out of that scenario. So now, in spite of not having that background in red teaming or any other penetration testing or security background, he was able to come up with an idea. Now, if we had had a close team or worked solo, we would not have been able to solve that scenario at all. So I always recommend you need to be a team player and be able to work alongside a team. A red teaming engagement is never complete without at least 3 to 4 individuals working on it. And the fourth one is that you need a good amount of situational awareness, understanding of what is that you're dealing with, What sort of a client is it that you're dealing with? What is their business like? What is their day-to-day process like? You have to understand it from A to Z. Sometimes you have to know it better than the company's employees itself. Fine. Next, we come into our technical skills section. What are the technical skills that you require to be a good red team operator as well as a lead? One is solid understanding of the basics, that is networking, OS, and applications. I always emphasize on this. You need to have solid understanding of these. And the best place for operating system and networking and applications and best practices to understand the basics is to look at the documentation of this. If documentation of the relevant services. If I wanted to understand Google Cloud Platform very well, I always go to the documentation side and I read as many documents I can so that I get a good grip of the basics. I follow the same for operating systems also. If I wanted to understand the internals of a free BSD operating system, I always go to the admin guide and read it as much as I can. Now, that is the best place to start. Second thing is that you need scripting abilities to build and modify tools. Sometimes the tools that are available in the market will not work readily inside your client's environment. You need to be able to modify these tools as and when required. Third one is that evasive malware creation and deployment. Creating and deploying malware is an important part of red teaming exercise, and you need to be able to create and deploy your own malware. Fourth is that Active Directory. You need to have a good amount of knowledge in the Active Directory side and the cloud environment. This is pretty important because this is where the crown jewels are. This is where the sensitive data is mostly lurking. And then you need to understand exploit reading and writing. When you look at an exploit, you need to understand what it is trying to do and how you can make it do better or how you can fine tune it. And the next one is that you need threat intelligence. Obviously, you need to imitate adversaries like APTs. So you need to understand their techniques, tactics, and procedures. For this, you need a good threat intelligence source. As an example, a very good paid one is that we use is from FireEye. The second one, a free one, is from Alien Vault OTX. The next one is understanding of blue team's capabilities. What I mean by this is that you need to be able to understand what is the enemy, who is the enemy that you're dealing with, what are his capabilities. Now, whether a blue team is able to detect you, whether they are not able to detect you, if you make this move, will they detect you or not? You need to be able to know that. Next is that good hands-on skills on Linux and Windows environment. You may need to create your C2C servers, destroy C2C servers, create a new Windows testing machine. Sometimes inside your client environment, you may not be able to use a Linux to perform certain attacks. You may need Windows in that case. So for all this, you need good amount of knowledge and not restrict your Linux knowledge just to host-based operating systems. Even to network devices, you need to know. Sometimes we've seen cases of sniffers running inside Cisco switches also. And then final one is that solid understanding of the cyber kill chain and experience in performing those attacks. If you look at the cyber kill chain, which I'm about to show you, you will, and if you refer to Mitra's ATT and CK guidelines, you will see a lot of attacks. You definitely not one person can perform all these attacks or know about all these attacks, but you need to know about most of them and understand the basics of all these attacks and how they are performed and try to get hands-on with these attacks. Solid technical skills, even if you're red team lead, is compulsory for a good red team engagement. Now, how is red teaming done? This is basically the kill chain, but we cannot use this exactly in the same procedure. We need modification in real life red teaming. So what happens is that we start with an exhaustive recon. We understand everything about the company, right from the people, the process, and technology inside the company. Even the process for to access the Wi-Fi, we will know it within a span of 1 week. All this recon will happen. I have another video on performing a recon. You can check that out. So in this recon phase, what we understand is that we perform an exhaustive recon of the infrastructure, people, and process. Email IDs, phone numbers, direct phone numbers, personal email addresses also we collect in certain cases. In performing a recon, what we also do is that we try to understand the business processes I told you earlier and the mainly people, process, and technology. Next one is a weaponization phase where we create the scenarios to exploit. Let us do this. As a result, we will be able to get this particular thing. For example, our main objective is to get an initial foothold. So we will plan like, let us send them a malware and make him open it. So through that we will get an initial foothold. Or let us social engineer and get his VPN credentials. Through this we will be able to get a foothold inside the network. Those are some things which we think of. And the third one is that the execution part, the delivery, then we get an exploitation and we get an initial foothold. And then there is persistence where we upload our malware and try to maintain. Next is privilege escalation, where we become an administrator, local administrator, and then there is persistence. We will try to establish ourselves across the network and run in multiple PCs at the same time, so that even if someone finds us out, we are still able to bounce back into the network. And then we have a command and control to exfiltrate sensitive data. After that, there is data exfiltration, and the engagement is pretty much done. But it doesn't happen in this particular order all the time. After we go into the internal network, there is again another phase of reconnaissance, trying to identify vulnerabilities, trying to exploit it, getting a foothold. All that, the reconnaissance part keeps happening throughout the engagement, and the cycle keeps on repeating. Now, later down the road in our red teaming course, we will go in much depth into each phases. Now, time for two real life stories. This happened quite recently, and I was leading the red team for both the engagements. So now, what happened was, in one engagement, the client was very strong from the perimeter. We could not even penetrate into their network. So in this case, we had to do social engineering. We tried for 1 week and we were not able to penetrate into the environment at all. We tried all possible servers. We found out their IP blocks, tried to identify as many applications, performed all the different sort of application related attacks, brute force attacks, and we were not able to get into their network at all. But in one case, what happened was, we found a VPN portal that was open. What we also found through LinkedIn was, one of the vendors had left his credentials there in the one of the vendors was having access to the VPN portal because he had written it in his LinkedIn resume that he's performing remote maintenance for this particular client. And we called him and asked him if he has access to this VPN portal. We did a spoofed call, and we called him from the company's phone number and asked him if we are doing an audit, so does he have access to this VPN portal? And he said yes. And from there, what we did was, we called him again after 2 days and tried to send him an email and told him that we want to recruit you to this company full time. So in this case, would you want to apply? So he said, yeah, definitely I want to join your company. So we sent him a link by creating a fake domain in the company's name and sent him a link. As soon as you open the link, we captured his VPN credentials. Because we told him to sign up with the ID that he uses to log into the VPN, which was at thiscompany.com. So from there, we captured his credentials. And after that, what happened was, the VPN had two-factor authentication. So now we tried to bypass it through alternate ways, but we were not able to. So what we went ahead and did was, just call one of the juniors suggested that, let's just call him and ask him for the OTP. We thought it was pretty crazy and we should not do it, but still I authorized it and we went ahead and did it. So we just told him that we are calling from the internal audit team and we need your credential. We want to log into your ID to perform certain checks. We need your OTP, and he gave it to us. It was that easy. So we got into the internal network, and from there the story is different. We got enterprise admin access, and the engagement paved way. Next is that case 2. In this case, it was pretty new to us because it was the time when Azure was catching up amongst our clients, and it was not commonly adopted. But what happened was, they did not have much of an on-prem presence. We were very much prepared for on-prem related attacks, but we totally missed the cloud side. Only after we started the engagement, we realized that they had a good amount of cloud presence. Now for this, again, we tried to enter into their cloud premise through brute forcing and other related attacks, but nothing happened. Again, we resorted to social engineering. We got one set of credentials, but after that, what happened was, when we tried to log in, Microsoft kept asking us for two-factor authentication. Now, the strange thing is that we did not perform the previous attack. There was a much easier bypass. All we had to do was we just changed the user agent from a desktop to an iPhone's user agent. If you understand how a browser works, you will know what is a user agent. Basically, a user agent tells every server what device is trying to access this website. Based on that, the web server will render the web pages in the particular format. So in this case, what we did was we just changed the user agent to an iPhone, and immediately what happened was we got access to the portal. Now this does not happen through some technical knowledge and thing. This was a coincidence because we had the username, we had the password, and we were pretty frustrated because we could not bypass the OTP. But then, since I had an iPhone, we just tried to log in. I was just pissed, and we just logged in with the iPhone, and immediately we got in. At that time, we realized that the conditional access in Microsoft Azure Cloud is not checking properly against iOS devices. So from then on, we used the same technique and compromised the entire cloud. Now, uh, the major takeaway from here should be that red teaming is a very uh, important and very interesting area of cybersecurity. To become a good red teamer, it's not just your technical skills that matters. There is a lot more to it. In order to help you with your career, what we have done is that we have created a free resume creating software in our website. Here is the link for it. We will also leave this link in the description for you to check out. And also what we have done for you is that we are giving you free resumes. You can go to this website and download this resume. It is a real life professional's resume. Do not copy the contents exactly as it is. Just try to understand what is the resume structure looking like, how good you need to structure your resume, and that is pretty much it. Thank you. Also, for further content, YouTube, we are not able to show demonstrations at this point in time because YouTube has blocked some of our multi-factor authentication, phishing, social engineering attacks, and other exploitation related videos have been removed recently. So as a result, what we're doing is that we are compiling all this into a course and providing it. If you require this, do let us know at easycybersec@gmail.com. Thank you.